Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throw podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my other co-host, Jay, aka Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, I'm doing excellent, bro. We're brewing for an excellent finals. I don't know what the finals matchup is gonna be just yet, but I think we're in for a good one regardless.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's already set in stone, right? Kind of is. It kind of is.
That's tough.
Unless we see something not done in NBA history happen over these next like 4 to 5 days, then we know what the what the NBA Finals matchup is, and we're gonna be talking about that in today's episode. We're gonna talk about NBA Finals. We're gonna talk about a certain individual retiring, which happened over the weekend as well. Lots of stuff to talk about. It's gonna be another great episode. But before we start, we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow our individual accounts at the Knockdown J, at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Our individual links will be found down below. As for the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, remember to check out our daily content on TikTok and Instagram. You know that's where you're going to find the best daily NBA content. You're going to see the NBA recaps. You're going to see all the different stupid stuff that we do in terms of the filters and everything. You're going to catch all that stuff over there. And in terms of the show, if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, just subscribe, leave a review, do all the good stuff to help out the numbers. Jay, are you ready to get into talking some NBA basketball today?
Yes, sir.
Let's get into it. And we are not going to be starting off with some conference finals talk to lead off the episode. We're going to be talking about Carmelo Anthony finally calling it quits over the weekend. He posted a video to Instagram talking about how he feels like this is like the end of the line. He thinks that like his time has passed, and he is now hanging up the basketball shoes. Long career for Carmelo. He is definitely one of the better players of this generation. We're just going to take you through some of his accolades: 10-time NBA All-Star, 2013 scoring champion, 6-time All-NBA, and of course, as part of the NBA 75th anniversary team. Jay, I know I probably know your answer to this. What is Melo a guaranteed Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I think he's a guaranteed Hall of Famer. I think obviously the NBA top 75 list having him there was a huge nod in his favor for a lot of people who were still potentially doubters as to whether or not he was a guaranteed Hall of Famer or not. I think that we put too much weight on the idea of ring culture, and that hurts guys like Carmelo Anthony. But when you just look at pure basketball, there's no way that he is not. He's one of the best pure scorers this league has ever seen. New York basketball was revived for a good 2 to 3 seasons earlier on in the 2000s because of Carmelo Anthony. Despite the fact that it was a rough stint in New York, it still might have been one of the most exciting times in New York basketball on the back of Carmelo Anthony, and obviously a little bit of Linsanity mixed in there. But also,
Yeah.
I think one of the most notable things that we do have to continue to take consideration into is that the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame is the Basketball Hall of Fame. Something else, TV, that shows up that doesn't show up, excuse me, when you read out the accolades for Carmelo Anthony on Basketball Reference is that he's a multi-time Olympic champion. That's something else that also always tends to be factored into when you're elected to the Basketball Hall of Fame. And Carmelo Anthony has been a big-time contributor on some very memorable Olympic teams. So I think that there's no way in the world he doesn't. I understand that his story is told in a very wonky roller coaster kind of way, but I think the best players have stories that may not always end the way we expect, but every step of the way there was a highlight moment to keep an eye out on. That was definitely Carmelo Anthony's career.
100%. One of the greatest scorers of our generation. And another thing I didn't even mention is that he's a top 10 scorer in NBA history. This guy was just known for just getting buckets, whether it was on the Nuggets, the New York Knicks. Even in the later parts of his career, he was still getting like those shots up in OKC, Houston, Portland, and even like in his final years, like in his final year in Los Angeles, he was still averaging a good 13 points a game. That was just what Melo does. That's what you will expect from Carmelo Anthony every time he's on the basketball court. He's not afraid to shoot. He is a clutch player. Like he's definitely had some very clutch moments in his career, and he was just able to just put the ball in the basket. That his signature move, the freaking like jab, 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 pull up from mid range. That's always associated with Carmelo Anthony, and he is 100% a Hall of Famer. I mean, he is someone who was able to take the Denver Nuggets before this year to like their furthest run in the playoffs. They made it to the West Conference Finals. Unfortunately, got swept by the Los Angeles Lakers then as well. But he was able to take the Nuggets that far as a what, like a 24, 25-year-old as well. So he was able to do that with them. And then of course in the New York Knicks, I mean, they've had their really rough years over the past couple decades. But man, there's that time with Carmelo Anthony, the J.R. Smith era over there was some really, really fun basketball, taking them all the way to the second round as well. He wasn't, again, the most winningest player, but you just knew that he was always gonna provide for you every single night. One of the top wings for basically more than a decade. He's definitely going to be someone that is going to be missed in the NBA. Definitely went out pretty bad in a sense where he didn't even get a contract for someone who is still who could still definitely contribute to an NBA team, but still a Hall of Fame career. Still someone that is going to be. I know it gets kind of rough right now, but someone like probably 5-10 years is going to be highly revered in NBA history.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. One last thing before we move on to the final stuff. How do you feel, like, where do you think that his jersey is going to be retired? Do you think that the Denver Nuggets will retire his jersey, or do you think it's going to be solely the New York Knicks? Do you think it's going to be both?
So I think it's more likely to be the Knicks than the Nuggets. I saw a really interesting comment that was kind of funny, but also a little disrespectful. So it depends on how people feel about this. But obviously, the comparison in terms of the number 15 jerseys to Nikola Jokic, right, who's currently in the
Yes.
NBA Finals, he's already taken this Denver Nuggets team further along than Carmelo Anthony ever did in his tenure with the Denver Nuggets. Something else that was also kind of funny in that comment was the fact that the Denver Nuggets were willing to give a second round draft pick Carmelo Anthony's number in the waking of him being traded in a certain way does give you a little bit of an indication of how Denver feels about Carmelo Anthony and his stint with Denver. I don't necessarily know how accurate and true that may be, but I do think it's something worth taking into consideration, right? Like the guy who got drafted mid Taco Bell commercial is the guy who got this legendary top 10 score of all times time players number in the passing of him being moved to the New York Knicks. So I don't think that means that there's necessarily ill will from the Denver Nuggets, but it definitely didn't seem as though that was one of those legacies that the Nuggets were worried about preserving in terms of his tenure there.
Yeah.
So I think believe it or not, I think the Knicks are more likely to raise his jersey up in the rafters than the Nuggets, and I actually think that if the Nuggets had to, they would be more likely to raise Melo and Jokic's than they are
Yeah.
to solely do Melos. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel you. Yeah, for sure. I think that, like, yeah, his number 7 jersey in New York, I think it's the one that's gonna be most remembered, and he's the one who probably gave the Knicks their most successful era over the past 15 years. So I definitely believe that he will get retired there.
Yeah.
Again, the Nuggets on the other hand, it's also the way he went out, right? It was also the way the
Right.
whole trade request. It was him like, you're gonna be a free agent in the summer. You could just end up just signing with the Knicks anyway. Why request like 4 months before you head into free agency? No, this guy completely forced that issue, made the trade possible. So, I is there some sort of ill will? Maybe, but also he, like, again, before this current playoff run, he brought you to probably the furthest you've ever been to in the NBA in terms of like making a conference finals as well. So he's obviously still a legend there in Denver, probably a bit more of a legend in New York, especially for modern day Knicks fans. So he's more than likely going to get his jersey retired there. But Denver, more of a different question. But yeah, thank you, Melo, for all the freaking memories, man. He was like it was him, D Wade, LeBron James, freaking carrying our childhoods along with Kobe as well. So definitely someone's gonna be missed. Hopefully he enjoys retirement, even though he really hasn't been in the league the last year and a half or so. So congratulations to Melo. Congrats to the guy. Again, also, I mean, you mentioned the Olympic stuff. Probably the best U.S. I mean, the best U.S. Olympian in terms of basketball potentially ever.
He's
I
probably
mean,
up
Jordan.
there, arguably, in terms of the teams that he's been on, the contributions that he's been on, a lot of the big time buckets that he's made in Olympic play as well. If he's not the best in terms of Olympic play, he's definitely up there. Like, I think that Carmelo Anthony is on a similar tier with a handful of those guys from the original Dream Team in terms of his overall Olympic contributions. That may be a hot take, depends. You guys can let us know in the comment section down below, but I definitely think that Carmelo Anthony, in terms of his Olympic play, he might not have a championship ring on his resume, but when it comes Moneyball time in the Olympics, that dude is ready to ball.
100%, and he deserves all the credit for that too. He there for like, I mean, he was there for his prime, and even there for the young guys when the last time they won the gold medal as well. So again, congrats Carmelo, and hopefully he enjoys a fantastic retirement. Moving on to the next topic, and we're gonna start talking about the conference finals because, oh boy, these conference finals went all the way left, something that we both weren't expecting, and we're gonna start over on the east side because before last night, the Miami Heat were up 3-0. Yes, they were up 3-0 on the number 2 seeded Boston Celtics. The Boston did end up getting a win yesterday. They played a fantastic third quarter, but the Miami Heat are still in full control of the series going back to the TD Garden. But Jay, quick before we talk about the Celtics, this Miami Heat run, starting from the play-in tournament, losing to the Atlanta Hawks, being 6 minutes away from losing to your Chicago Bulls, and now they're one game away from the NBA Finals. Jay, is this the best Cinderella story in NBA history?
I mean, it has to be, bro. It has to be. I think we were talking about this off camera, and we were trying to think of even just the teams that could possibly compete, right? The 2011 Dallas Mavericks with the insane run that they have on the Dirk Nowitzki revenge tour, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, in terms of trying to make up for, faltering after an MVP and things of that nature. Um, I think the other team that we brought up was the We Believe Warriors, but they weren't able to make as deep of a run. And so that's obviously part of what also really hurt them in terms of their candidacy. The '04 Pistons probably was a great suggestion. But I think aside from, I mean, they had a great run to the tourney, but I think the encapsulation of them beating Kobe and Shaq in the finals is what really kind of cements them as this legendary come out of nowhere team more so than
Yeah.
their actual run. I think it's how they were able to cap it off that really cements them. But I think when you look at the Miami Heat, I mean, they literally have been chosen as the underdogs pretty much universally throughout the
Yes.
entirety of this postseason, outside of probably outside of the game against us. I think even against Atlanta was probably favored against them as well. So
Yeah.
I think the only time they've ever been truly favored was in the matchup against us to get to the postseason.
Yeah.
So when you look at it from that perspective, the teams that they have beat on the way they've been able to do it, the guys that have really put themselves in a really good position, not just in terms of being able to make some serious noise this postseason, but hey, TV, I keep trying to tell you, we haven't done any offseason preview stuff yet, but the Miami Heat got some free agents on the roster this upcoming summer that are going to command some money, my boy. They are gonna. I mean, Max Strus is shooting the lights out. Shout out Gabe Vincent. I don't know if he's a free agent this summer, but I think within the next 2 seasons, he's going to be coming up off the books as well. He's a guy that's going to be interesting. It's going to be a really interesting free agent class, but I don't want to beat the drum on that too much. I want to talk more about the Miami Heat and just how well they've played without Tyler Hero on the floor, having a handful of undrafted players playing big minutes for them. Everybody wants to talk about Jimmy Butler, but that is not the whole story. Jimmy Buckets is just the lead forefront. He's the guy on the front of the newspaper that tells you this is how the Heat did it. But there's a handful of undrafted guys that have been really putting it together, and they've been able to dust off a couple people. We've mentioned, Duncan Robinson's name more during this postseason run than we probably did the entire regular season, for example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Kyle Lowry, he's looking right now. Kevin Love has really put himself in a good position with Miami to be a serviceable big man for them. They're just playing really great basketball, bro. And I think this is some of the best basketball we've seen on a Cinderella-like run like this. This is like March Madness-esque, right? But we're doing it in
Yeah.
7-game series. This is my team is better than your team. You know what I mean? And you gotta
Yeah.
love it. You gotta love that what the Miami are doing, what the Miami Heat are doing. And 3-1 is hard to come back from. I'm not saying that Boston can't, but I definitely think that Miami has it in the bag. TV, we pushed back our recording. People don't even know this. We pushed back our recording because I had a gut feeling that Miami was going to just get this thing cinched out. I thought they took Boston's hearts in game 3 with the way they were able to get that win. Gabe Vincent balling out, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, they're gonna go ahead and handle their business. And it's no offense to them that they lost in Game 4. I think that Boston understood that their backs were against the wall and they're going back home now to try to see if they can steal another one. But yeah, dude, I think out of all the teams that we could think of, Miami has to be at the top of the Cinderella list now. I don't think there's any team that's ever made the kind of run like this. Like I don't think we can find an NBA team that's been this crazy, this lethal, and TV. This was also one of the lowest scoring teams in the NBA during the regular season, and
Yes.
they're putting numbers on folks. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I
Crazy.
I don't get it. I don't get this. Like this shouldn't be really possible. And I mean, we talked about Jimmy Butler. I mean, at this point, we've beat the Jimmy Butler, the playoff Jimmy Drum all playoff long. But the way that these role players have stepped up when in the regular season they've been a no-show. Max Strus underwhelming season. Gabe Vincent, Caleb Morton, where the heck did he come from? This guy was on the Hornets with his twin for the longest time. Comes in this year and is like their third most effective player. It's absolutely insane how like what this run has done, and it's just the fact that the Miami Heat, who like the regular season just feels like an absolute blur. It feels like a completely different season to what we are seeing right now. And look, they had all the opportunities to make the deals. Miami Heat fans were saying, trade this guy, trade that guy. We need to make changes because they were the number one seed last year. They were one of the title favorites. And going into this playoffs, especially against that series against the Milwaukee Bucks, we thought they were barbecue chicken. Let's be completely honest. We thought they were absolutely cooked. And then they went on to beat them in 5, beat the Knicks in 6. And now they're going up against the number 2 seeded Boston Celtics, who looked like again one of the top title contenders going into the playoffs, and they're manhandling them. Like you mentioned, this isn't March Madness. This isn't like one game you're out of here. They completely took their souls in 3 of these games, especially Game 3. That 26-point win in Game 3 really made it feel like the Boston Celtics were dead on the floor. So kudos to them for actually like fighting back and winning Game 4. But man, this run. It's so impressive, especially with the way Jimmy's running it, but the way and his leadership just elevates others. It's not that he's like doing what Jokic does and like making everything super easy, like dishing out like 10 plus assists per game. This guy's leadership just trickles down. His confidence just trickles down to everyone on that roster, and they feel like they can play their best basketball led by Jimmy Butler, and it's honestly one of the most insane things to see. Just the way that they are, just the way that they're built, I don't see how they can lose 4 games in a row. There's just no way, especially against this Boston Celtics team. Again, good win for them, but there's just no way. There's absolutely no way I see them losing 4 games in a row. I have to agree with you. This is the best Cinderella team probably in NBA history.
And TV, just to kind of add insult to injury, something else that I even remember when I was putting an article together is that coming out of the semifinal round of the
Yeah.
playoffs, the Miami Heat were last amongst championship contenders for championship odds, according to Las Vegas insiders. They were at like plus 1,200 as like the lowest out of the. I'm talking even with Philly still in the mix at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, Boston, Denver, the Lakers, Golden State, right? Like all of these teams were still in the mix at the time. And Miami was right there at the bottom of the totem pole at plus 1,200. And here we are with this situation. And I thought something that was even more interesting, TV, was I saw a bunch of different weird, like throwback graphics over the last couple of days.
Yeah.
And I just want to share a few of them because I thought it was so interesting. There was one that was dating all the way back to Jimmy Butler's like college days, where
Yeah.
apparently like the team that Joe Mazzulla played on in college was
Yeah.
eliminated by Jimmy Butler's Marquette team back in college. There's
Oh my God, yeah. Oh, in the Big East tournament. Yeah, in the Big East tournament.
yeah,
I saw that graphic
there's
too.
another
Yeah.
reference that also says the last time that that Jimmy Butler played against the Denver Nuggets in a postseason setting, it was under the umbrella of that big old win or go home final game of the regular season between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver
Yeah.
Nuggets, in which the Minnesota Timberwolves won that game, eliminated the Nuggets from the postseason, and the Minnesota Timberwolves made the playoffs for the first time in a good while. That was
Yeah.
another weird little reference that I noticed as well. Like Jimmy Butler, he has a weird like Slayers mentality, and he's kind of checking names off, group after
Yeah.
group. The Milwaukee Bucks, getting to get back on the Milwaukee Bucks, getting to get back on not really the Knicks in that sense, but I think getting to get back on Tom Thibodeau to a certain extent, right, as his former head coach. Then you're checking off the box with the Boston Celtics, and now again with the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic and those guys. Granted, that's a totally different team, but Jimmy Butler's playing on a totally different Miami team now as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that whole thing goes. Again, I don't want to go ahead and call the series just yet, but like you mentioned before on TV, being up 3-1 with the kind of team that they have, three more chances to go in and get one W. I definitely think we're in store for a Denver Nuggets Miami Heat finals, and it's going to be interesting to preview that once we kind of get the full storybook on how everybody's going to be going into it in terms of health and things of that nature. Because, hey, if anybody thought the NBA script is real, this is probably one of those things that deters you a little bit from it. But here's the weird
Yeah.
little Illuminati backhand thing for it. Everybody's been talking about the NBA script being real. Who says that the reverse NBA script is doing this to make you think that it's real, just to further validate how real it really is? That's the
Oh,
insane part about all
oh.
this. So yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. If the NBA is that big brain, if they're that meta in that sort of sense, they got me. They absolutely got me.
Hey
And like
man,
all of the
Marvel got us for 15 years, bro. Marvel got us with a build-up story for 15 years, and nobody really knew how it was gonna culminate until we saw Thanos' big purple tail for the first time. Who
yeah.
knows what the NBA is cooking with now that they've got real parity in the league again? Who knows?
Yeah. And no, I know what you mean. If their script was good, we would not have had the Cavs versus Warriors for 4 years straight. I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right now, we would not have had that for 4 straight years if the freaking script was doing right by the NBA fans. But I know what you mean. They still. I mean, again, it's not over yet. It's still not over for Miami. They still have to win one more game, but I just don't see any way that they lose this. There's no way. Going to the flip side though, talking about the Boston Celtics. What the heck are we watching? I mean, yes, they won the last game, but down 0-3 at one point. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they Jason Tatum didn't score a field goal in the fourth quarter till the last game. That's how freaking bad it has been for the Boston Celtics. And this core, this lineup, has been together for what, 3-4 years now? The J and J combo, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, all them guys. You could blame Joe Mazzulla all you want as the rookie head coach or whatever. But at the end of the day, when you watch game 3, when you watch game 4, especially at the end there in game 3, I see a team that's defeated. I see a team that's beat up, a team that is just giving up on the spot. Jay, you can put the blame on the coach as you want, but is it time for them to shuffle off their core? Is it time for them to actually make some moves? Because clearly this hasn't been working.
I think it's tough because circumstantially, there's a double-edged sword, right? The regular season went as strongly as it did because this core is that good, right? They've been that good, and when they play locked in, they are one of the better teams in the NBA. We know that. I think that X's and O's wise, in terms of coaching, this is one of those series when you play up against one of them guys, and Eric Spoelstra, in terms of the head coaching rankings, he is one of those dudes who you cannot go in there and simply rely simply on talent in order to win that series. This is where being a rookie head coach in Joe Mazzulla, mind you, Joe Mazzulla, for people who don't remember, he wasn't a guy that was sitting there right there as an assistant head coach. He was in the huddles with Ime Udoka and those guys. He was one of those bench coaches. He was one of those guys that was in the background. He was mainly facilitated as more of a rah-rah players coach from behind the scenes more than anything. This is one of those situations where you're playing up against one of the best coaches in the NBA for a good period of time now. And he's been holding down the fort. I think Eric Spoelstra has for the last 3 or 4 seasons is arguably the best coach in the NBA. Across from him now is a rookie head coach who's probably been leaning on his talent to carry the torch for a majority of the season. I heard something the other day that mentioned the idea that Joe Mazzulla is very much a player empowerment coach. A lot of those kind of coaches, they allow their players to make their own decisions, draw up plays for themselves, discuss amongst themselves what works, what doesn't work. But you know what happens? Jaylen Brown has an idea. Jason Tatum has an idea. Marcus Smart has an idea. Al Horford has an idea. But there's no way for them to text how they're going to execute all of those ideas or determine whose idea really works best for what it is that they need to do in order to be successful on a night-to-night basis. So being so reliant on these guys to say, oh, they're veterans, they've been here, they've done this, they're talented enough, and simply saying, you guys know what you're doing, you guys make it happen. In a series like this against a hard-nosed Jimmy Butler, across the bench from guys that are undrafted, playing for paydays, playing across from Eric Spoelstra, who's seen this up close and personal, a chance at the finals multiple times. You can't just rely on these guys to just be good. So there's a part of me that does think that a real veteran style X's and O's coach changes this series, because Joe Mazzulla is playing checkers with a coach that plays chess, and that's tough because they the old KD Twitter post said, hard work beats talent when talent don't work hard, right? That's Miami in a nutshell. That's Miami versus Boston in a nutshell, right? And so all of that culminates to this idea that I actually think that their core is strong enough to keep it going if they have the right coach in the front. And that does make me wonder if this is somebody else. Here's a great example. If it was Nick Nurse, for example, can he hang tight with this kind of talent in an X's and O's battle against somebody as tactical as Eric Spoelstra? I think they hold up a little better. There's a handful of other coaches that are actually out on the prowl right now that would be interesting in a situation like this. Does a Frank Vogel, for example, have an interesting back and forth against a head coach like Eric Spoelstra? I think that could be a very dynamic series with those two going at it X's and O's wise. So I'm gonna say no. I'm actually gonna say no. I think there's one more year of needing things as they are with a new head man in the front. Excuse me, because I think that I hate to disrespect Joe Mazzulla because I know how important he is to this franchise in terms of how the guys view him. But I think when you look at it from an X's and O's standpoint, this is kind of like when Luke Walton took over the Golden State Warriors for 34 games, right? That stretch where it's kind of you're coaching on autopilot, your coaching record looks really good because the boys is balling out. But it's like, bro, you got a handful of dogs out here, and it's the regular season, it's 82 games. You got a bunch of young guns shooting it up, going crazy. You've got one of the most talented teams in the NBA. Yeah, if you let them rock during the 82 game season, they're going to get you some buckets. They're going to get you some dubs, and they're going to make you look really good. But when it comes time to really go ahead and ball out, these coaching matchups, this is where the bread and butter comes from. I don't think we learned much about Joe Mazzulla from that Philadelphia 76ers series. I think we learned more about guys like Joel Embiid and James Harden. I don't think in that initial series against the Atlanta Hawks, I don't think we learned a lot about Boston from that. We knew they were more talented. In a series like this, it's a little different.
Yeah, 100%. I love that analogy because when Luke Walton took over for the Golden State Warriors for that short time period, man, they looked just as good, and people were like, you know what, this guy could be the next head coach. And then we saw him with the Lakers, and then we saw him with the Kings, and then we know what happened after that. I agree with you. I think that Joe Mazzulla doesn't feel like the right type of coach, especially for deep playoff runs. Because, like, I mean, like you said, he lets the players really dictate the offense, which Marcus Smart says it's a good thing. I mean, like it has like shown like a lot of success this season. There's a reason why they were the number 2 seed. There's a reason why they had another 50+ win season. But when you really come down to it, and in a matchup against Eric Spoelstra, someone who has done this for like 15 years, it feels like. He's going to outmatch you every single day of the week. Your role players seem like some of the best role players over the first 2 rounds when you look at the Malcolm Brogdons, the Horfords, the Derek Whites. They're getting outperformed by Strus, Caleb Martin, Cody Zeller, mind you, is getting some like meaningful minutes here for the Miami Heat. And they are out hustling you, outplaying you. And I think a lot of that does fall on Joe Mazzulla because he just doesn't have the demeanor. He doesn't have like that energy where he's like, I'm gonna, like, guys, stand up, listen to me. This is what we're gonna have to do. I don't think he's that type of coach, and I think that's kind of hurting them in this aspect. But I will defend him though, because as much as you want to say, oh, he needs to draw better plays. He needs to kind of take more control of the Celtics organization. There's one thing that he can't control. It's effort level.
True.
And what we've seen with the Celtics, not just season, but from seasons in the past, when things get really tough, when things are at their lowest point, we see with the Miami Heat, when they always get to the lowest point, they always have a bounce back every single time. Where's that in the Celtics? None of them have that dog in them like a Jimmy Butler does. None of them have that extra, like kind of that extra like internal motivation. Because the minute they face any sort of resilience, it feels like they're gonna fold. But when they're up, they're up. Everything is all peaches and roses because they're just that talented. But when they face adversity, whether it's this series, they were up 2-0 against the Golden State Warriors last year. Like they had those. Sorry, no, they were like in the series with the Golden State Warriors last year. And when the minute they like face adversity, it just feels like they settle. They don't have that extra gear that they can reach. And that doesn't fall on Joe Mazzulla. That falls on the players. That falls on how they feel about each other. Now, I'll agree with you in the fact where maybe you get a new coach in here next year, see how that works with this core. But I think that this core is on a short leash, man. This core right now is on a short leash. I know that a lot of them are young. A lot of them are like 26 and under. But something's got to change. And results mean so much in the NBA, and especially of what you have done for me recently. The Celtics, they made it to the finals. They made it to the conference finals again. You should be with the depth that you have, the start players that you have, especially with the emergence of Jaylen Brown over the last couple of seasons. This should be enough to win a championship. And so far, it looks like they are not going to be able to get to that point once again in this year. I mean, I just don't think like if they don't perform well this year, they don't get it done next year. I just think that this core is on a short leash at this point.
I think you make a really good point in terms of that. And I want to pick up on somebody that you just mentioned, because I think that the guy who actually has the most influence on what that looks like is Jaylen Brown. Something that needs to be noted is Jaylen Brown put himself in a position to be eligible for a 5-year, $295 million contract extension this summer because of making the All NBA team. What he chooses to do in response to earning that is going to tell us a lot about the Celtics' future in the nearer future. If he elects
Yeah.
to opt for that extension, granted, because here's the thing, he can be offered a significant extension if he becomes a free agent next summer, but it won't be 295 million. Obviously, the Celtics can
Yeah.
always offer him that maximum amount. The other teams are not able to give him nearly as much. If I find out how much other teams are eligible to give, I'll obviously shout that out as well. But that's something
Mhm.
that's very notable. Um, with that being the case, if he elects to forego that and test free agency, that could be huge in terms of what their core looks like in the nearer future. If he elects to
Yeah.
sign that contract extension, it gives us a better understanding of what this core should and could shape out as moving forward, actually for the next 3 to 5 seasons. So Jaylen Brown, interestingly enough, has a lot of influence on if this core stays as it is or continues, or excuse me, stays as it is or decides to go a different direction. So that's going to be an interesting thing to keep tabs on, because of all the players so far in this postseason for the Celtics, I would say Jaylen Brown has not only performed the best, despite the fact that statistics might point to Jason Tatum. I think he's been the most consistent, and that's what I think has made Jaylen Brown their best player on a series basis.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't help also that there's been reports like from like months ago from the New York Times and all that, like hinting at that possibility. The Rockets are looking to be someone to be really aggressive, and someone with the services of Jaylen Brown. Someone with the third overall pick like the Portland Trailblazers is going to look at that situation very, very carefully to see if he's going to be available at some point. So yeah, these next couple of years, whether it's this offseason or the next, is going to be extremely important for the Celtics, because honestly, I think if Jaylen Brown was as committed as probably like we would hope that he'd be, especially to like a young championship contender, I don't think the Celtics wouldn't mind giving him $295 million. He is a borderline top 15 player. He's still young enough where there's going to be definitely room to grow. It's just if he's on the same page with them, and I think that's going to be something to really look out for in these next 2 seasons, to see if if he's like comfortable with the situation he's in, and if he wants to take his talents elsewhere, because his talent is going to be very sought after by many NBA teams. And I think, like you mentioned, it's going to be interesting to try to keep tabs on the situation, because a lot of the Celtics future is going to rely on him, because Jason Tatum all alone is not going to get you to the championship. Is not going to win you that. A number two like Jaylen Brown is going to get you there. So it's going to be interesting to see where that ends up going. Let's jump over to the other series. We're going to start talking about the Western Conference Finals. And that one is over. That series is over. 4-0. The Denver Nuggets advanced to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history after taking down the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, Michael Malone has talked about this basically all series long, and he said this after they won the Western Conference Finals. The narrative right now around the Nuggets, around the series, is firstly in game one, it wasn't that the Nuggets absolutely like destroyed the Lakers, even though the Lakers did come back and have a decent game. It was more like, oh, the Lakers found something. Rui Hachimura and Nikola Jokic, that's the answer. That's 100%. That's going to stop him. Yeah, that didn't stop him. And even after the series, Michael Malone mentioned it, it's not about how the Nuggets won this series in such dominating fashion. It's about how the Lakers got swept, and that's is gonna garner all the headlines. National media doesn't want to talk about it, but here in this episode, we are. Jay, are the Nuggets, even making the NBA Finals, are they still underrated?
Yeah, I do believe that, because I think when you just look at how everything has went up until this point, the fact that the Lakers made it this far gave all Lakers optimists and LeBron enthusiasts so much courage to feel like, oh yeah, we've seen this movie before, which means we also know how it's gonna end. And it ended completely different than how they expected. And it really puts things on its head now, because those people have to reevaluate. Now those people are going to go back and say, oh, well, LeBron was hobbled, or our team isn't even as good as their team. Their team is deeper than ours. But beforehand, that's not how they felt coming into the series. They felt as though they had the best tandem in the grouping. Their team, quote unquote, was playing better basketball. Let me tell you something, TV.
Yeah.
The Denver Nuggets made D'Angelo Russell unplayable. The Denver Nuggets put Vanderbilt on the bench for most of this series. Malik Beasley didn't touch the court for most of this postseason. You want to know what all that means? The trade deadline moves that you guys made had an expiration date.
Yes.
We all saw it coming. If you're smart, we all saw it coming. Run the tape back, TV. I said there's two ways this series ends. Denver made me look silly because somehow I still underestimated them. Check how funny
Yeah.
this is. Run the tape back. I said there's two ways this series ends. Denver wins in 5, right? And I remember on the podcast, you told me I was being bold by saying it was 5 games. I say
Yeah.
Denver wins in 5, where the Lakers got to go win it in 7 games. Denver made me look silly. I clearly underestimated. They got them boys up out of there in 4. But I think that just goes to show you that even with how talented they are, people, even including myself to a certain degree, still have wonders about just like, yo, how really good is this Denver team with everybody clicking? Because of course, season after season, there's always been some iteration of, oh, okay, where they were too young. Oh, well, they weren't ready for the moment. Oh, they were there, but circumstantially they didn't have the players. Then it's the injuries. Then it's, well, now your team is as optimized as it's ever been. Your team is as
Yeah.
optimized as it's ever been. Aaron Gordon has been a big time player for them. KCP might be one of the sneakiest, most effective, like off-season trade acquisitions of this entire year. That acquisition
Yes.
of KCP for Monte Morris is gonna look like a steal.
Yeah.
Looking at if we were to do off-season grades, reviewing that trade,
Yeah.
those off-season trades that took place a year from then, going into the summer, that would have to be like somewhere in top 5 in terms of the
Yeah.
trades that were made this summer, in terms of what kind of effect it's been able to have on this basketball
Yeah.
team.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think the Denver Nuggets are still considered heavily underrated, because I think even when people want to believe in Denver, there's still this little bit of doubt that makes you wonder just how good they actually are. I gave the Lakers a game because I figured they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But if we're smart and we've seen how Jokic has played all postseason, we'd say, well, the Nuggets have Jokic and Jamal Murray. So
Yes.
the Lakers don't deserve jack. But we give them a game, we give them 2 games because we say, Denver's good, but those guys over there. You know what I mean? And that's
Mm-hmm.
what
Exactly.
happened. So I think, yes, I still think they are heavily underrated, even now.
Yes. They were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference for like 2.5 months. They bailed in to complete the last month of the season, and they still ended up with the number 1 seed. The one series where we were 100% sure they were going to win was the Timberwolves series. After that, there was doubt around the Phoenix series. There was doubt around this Lakers series, and they put those narratives to bed. Not just to bed, they stomped on them and kicked them, anything, like everything. They just said, you know what? Whatever national media is talking about, F that. We are going to do our own thing. And they were able to pull through. Jamal Murray, we have to discuss him in the same realm as like a Kawhi Leonard and a Jimmy Butler. In terms of playoff performers, we have to talk about him like with those guys under the same breath, because him playing at this level, almost averaging 30 points a game in this playoff run, deserves a lot more recognition than it is. Nikola Jokic. Jay, I don't know if you remember this, but for years people were saying, you cannot win an NBA title with Nikola Jokic as your lead guy.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot win with a center who will get dragged out to the perimeter. Oh, they're gonna expose him in pick and rolls. Oh, however they're gonna counteract that. You know what? We're gonna make him our freaking point guard. He's gonna average a triple double in the postseason. Beat Will Chamberlain's record for most triple doubles in a postseason ever. We're gonna have this guy shoot one-legged turnaround three-point shots at the end of the shot clock, and he's doing it. He is doing this on a night-to-night basis. All these narratives that people have brought up for years and years, gone in smoke. Gone in smoke, because they were able to pull through. They have the head coach. The supporting cast absolutely dogged the Lakers supporting cast, whether it was KCP, Bruce Brown. You talked about KCP being one of the top offseason moves. Bringing in Bruce Brown for that cheap of a contract seems like a daylight robbery at this point. He is fantastic. He is fantastic coming off the bench. They're using a 36-year-old Jeff Green, and he's playing some meaningful minutes. A rookie in Christian Brown. Like, this is a team built top to bottom. Everything that we look for in a championship contender, the MVP candidate, the supporting cast, the secondary star, everything was right in front of us. but we still refuse to believe it. And now they give us every reason not to. They are underrated because we, like you mentioned, we always try to find some sort of hole in them when they have proven time and time again. Where is this hole that they're talking about? Aaron Gordon scored 22 points in the freaking elimination game and freaking locked down LeBron James in that fourth quarter. He had, I think, like one field goal made. He had one field goal made, including and he blocked LeBron James on that final possession. The Nuggets are the most complete team in the league right now. The defense that people were worried about, those concerns are out the window. They like completely um took away LeBron in that second half, Anthony Davis. Even when you look at the Phoenix Suns series, they took away Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in those final two games. They've shown that they're able to win games defensively. They have arguably the best player in the league in Nikola Jokic, Western Conference Finals MVP. They got everything we've been looking for in a title contender. But we're just keep saying, just show us, keep showing us, keep showing us. And they're here at this point. I don't care who you come out the East. The Nuggets should be the favorite against anyone coming out of the East. And I think that at this point, we have to start giving them the flowers because they're still not even being talked about right now. Every freaking talking head show that I watch, oh, what are the Lakers are going to do next? Oh, how much money are you going to pay Austin Reeves? There's still basketball going on. Jamal Murray is having like a great run. Nikola Jokic is doing so well. National media is not going to talk about it, but man, if you know ball, you know that freaking the Nuggets have been it. Them not making it deep in the playoffs has nothing to do with Nikola Jokic himself. The last 2 years, he finally has a healthy roster. We've been saying they better perform when they're healthy because, or else there's going to be this whole narrative about them. They've proven that wrong. They just proven that wrong.
And TV, I want to piggyback that by even bringing up something else that's reminiscing, because that's a great point that you just made. We brought up at the beginning of the postseason, we just had the discussion of who were some of the guys that were under the most pressure going into this postseason, right? And obviously, Jokic was at the top of that list or somewhere within our top three because we felt, okay, the biggest thing is, okay, you've gotten back-to-back MVPs. You're in discussion for a third potential MVP, in a row. You have your roster back. You have the most optimized version of this roster that you've probably ever had since becoming the go-to guy of the Denver Nuggets. We gave you the excuse last season of not being healthy. We gave you excuse back in the bubble of, yes, Jamal Murray, he popped off, but that was still under interesting circumstances and under the umbrella that you guys are still kind of brand new to this stage, right? I think even the Clippers series, right, for example, was just another one of those that was just an interesting dynamic back and forth with them where obviously even in that series, people were like super like negative about them in that series, came out and made things happen. Obviously, the Golden State Warriors where all that narrative about Jokic started back up again and all that great stuff. But again, doubt all over the place. And now we come into this whole season and we say, okay, man, we've seen everything. Finish the job. Now we're here. But I'll go back to a question I asked you 2 weeks ago that I think is so crazy because it correlates with this exact question that you're asking me about how underrated are they. I remember 2 episodes ago I asked you, are we just all stupid? I was like, are we just all dumb? Because is there this weird universe where the Nuggets have been the best team in the league the whole year and nobody wanted to acknowledge it? Was it just the fact that this entire season, the Nuggets have been the best team? They are the team that should have been the championship favorite. They're the team that we should consider as a real championship contender. Yet, Phoenix got Kevin Durant. Dallas got Kyrie Irving. The Lakers look healthy now. They've got an actual deep bench. Holy cow. The Celtics got this. Philly's playing like this. And we kept giving ourselves reasons to pick anybody else but Denver. But this entire time, Denver has been this team. Denver's not doing anything different this postseason. I would say the only big change is that the shot-making ability of the Denver Nuggets in this Lakers series has been unreal. That's probably the only thing that I would say is definitely like a big difference. But in terms of their ability to score the basketball, guard across the board, and just play real fundamental hoops, they've been this team all season long. So there's nothing different about Denver that makes them look like somebody that we shouldn't anticipate to be in this position, a la the Miami Heat, who are the exact opposite of the Denver
Yeah,
Nuggets
yeah,
in terms of championship equity. This is a team that everybody and their mama had a reason to doubt and believe weren't good enough and believe that they were undermanned and believe that they were under talented, and they superseded that. The
yeah.
Denver Nuggets are the opposite end of the spectrum. They've displayed all of the bullet points as to why they should be here. And we told ourselves, but I don't think so. It's
With
crazy. It's crazy to
without
think about.
without any good reason either. And it's not like any of these players are like bad playoff performers. We've seen the Jamal Murray take over playoff games in the past. We've seen Nikola Jokic elevate his play in the playoffs. I think you're right. I think we're just stupid. I think we might just be stupid. And I don't even want to blame us. Like Michael Boone
Yeah.
mentioned, no one talks about them. No one ever talks about them. That's the reason why we're not putting them in the same light as these other teams, even though they deserve to be there. Because no one wants to talk about Denver. Did you see the post game after this loss? It felt like a funeral. Like Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson felt so sad looked so sad that the Denver Nuggets won this series. You know why? Because they have to go to Denver now every other game. Now they have to go to Denver for multiple times a game and not enjoy Los Angeles weather. That's the reason why. That's the reason why they're why they're acting like this is a whole funeral. The Denver Nuggets deserve to be here. I don't like I said. I've seen people in conversations say, "Oh, how about the ratings? Oh, the ratings are ruined." Who cares about the ratings? We're watching some of the best basketball in the league right now, led by Nikola Jokic. I'm tired of this whole narrative saying, "Oh, who cares about the casual things? These other these ESPN, Fox Sports networks. Who cares? This has been the best basketball team all season long. Continue to prove it in the playoffs. And again, whoever they come up against in the NBA Finals, they should be the favorites because they have not given us any other reason to say otherwise. They haven't.
Yeah. I think the funniest part about the Denver Nuggets is just that narrative that, like, you mentioned it just a second ago. We picked everybody else just cause. We picked everybody else just cause. Joel Embiid is the MVP. James Harden, underrated all-star this year. Boston Celtics, one of the best teams in the league, with Jason Tatum playing at an NBA MVP caliber level. Jaylen Brown, all NBA caliber guy. Giannis Antetokounmpo with the Milwaukee Bucks. They get Chris Middleton back. Drew Holiday, still one of the best two-way guards in the league. Brook Lopez, DPOY candidate. In the Western Conference, the Lakers, if you got AD and Braun, in Braun we trust. Golden State, defending champions with Steph Curry balling out of his mind. The Phoenix Suns, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, CP3, DeAndre Ayton. Name a starting four in the league that's hanging with that. Well, the Denver Nuggets. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I mean, granted, they're not the ones who they're not the ones who had to get them out of there. But still, like, it's just that idea, man, that it's just like we just picked every reason to doubt them, and it's just hilarious how it's all coming full circle now.
We're not doing that anymore. We are not doing this. Honestly, we're gonna do our finals preview next year. Next week, and and of course the Eastern Conference Finals is gonna be done whether it goes 7 or not. By that time, we're gonna see a lot of Denver Nuggets. We're gonna have to really strip this down and be like, you know what, the Denver Nuggets are just that team, and we have to show them the respect because they 100% deserve it. They were down 15 at halftime to the Lakers. That lead gone in an instant. Denver Nuggets are like that, man. They are that type of team. Moving on to the Lakers, though, they were the 13th seed earlier in the season. We talked about how all season long the Lakers just kept hanging around, and everything just started to snowball at the perfect time. But they weren't able to get the job done. We said that this run was starting. I think even before the playoffs, we just kept saying, "Man, I don't want to believe in the Lakers, but they're giving us more and more reasons to believe." And it took us all the way to the Western Conference Finals, but they got stopped short by the best team in the league. Jay, was this their best chance? And is there any chance they're going to be able to be back in this position next year, or even in the future after that?
I think this was their best chance because I was just telling my dad about this the other day. They shot the biggest quiver they had left. The Russell Westbrook trade for a season and a half was the big quiver everybody was saying they needed to fire off if this team was going to get any better. There's nothing else left. They're going to have, including Anthony Davis and LeBron James, I think they're only going to have 5 or 6 guys under contract going into this summer, right? D'Angelo Russell is somebody they have to think about whether or not they want to bring back. I believe Malik Beasley is in the mix for that. Jared Vanderbilt is in the mix for that. Rui Hachimura is in the mix for that. Austin Reeves is in the mix for that. And that's going to be an expensive brother to have to try to retain because I think he's going to command some serious money on the free agency market with some of these teams that have some real money. Orlando, San Antonio. There's going to be some interesting teams that might throw him a bag. So it's going to be a real dogfight to even get a guy back like that. And even if they renounce the rights to a handful of guys, I think the amount of money they can create in terms of cap space is about 32 million. It's not a max cap space, but that's a lot of money to maybe throw at a third all-star. But we've seen that the trio super team era is over. Depth, and fundamental basketball is the new wave where having a MVP caliber guy or 2 all-star caliber dudes with a handful of role players that know how to play the game of basketball well on both ends of the floor is the new wave, right? So having this expensive team with a bunch of minimum contract guys, we've seen that very formula flame out for this same Lakers team. Yeah. But now LeBron James and Anthony Davis are a year older. The roster is turning over again, which is just another excuse of a season to say, hey, we didn't get the time to gel. We had to gel throughout an entire regular season. By the time postseason play came, hey man, look, we were just trying to, just do damage with the fact that we knew we had Braun and AD back there. It's one of those things where you just have to wonder, like, I don't even know. This team isn't going to look the same next year. We'll probably get into the LeBron stuff briefly in a second in terms of his comments after in the post presser. But I don't know if we know this team isn't going to look the same next season. And then you throw on top of that every other method they have left to get better is gone now. The super team method we know has its limitations. The Russell Westbrook and 2 picks trade for a big time package for depth is out of the question now. A handful of guys you traded, you now have to make decisions on whether you want to retain them. Guys like Malik Beasley, D'Angelo Russell, and Jared Vanderbilt, who can't even get minutes in some of these postseason series. Yeah. I mean, just you kind of just be able to pass it back over to you and get your opinion on it. Yeah, I'll kind of end off by saying I think they shot the biggest arrow they had left, and now it's gone.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the thing about the whole super team era and the reason why it died so quickly is we've seen it with the Nets, we've seen it with the Lakers as well. The minute one of those guys go down, your season's done for. Your season's absolutely done for. We've seen it with the Nets. The minute Kyrie Irving went down, their championship chances went down. And the thing now with the Los Angeles Lakers, yes, they can throw money at Kyrie Irving. They can't create that big three again. It is a possibility. But can you trust LeBron James at age 38, Anthony Davis to maintain their health for an 82-game season? We're not even asking you to play 82 games. We're just asking you not to get injured before the playoffs.
Right.
That is a tough task as these guys in particular. The health is going to be such a major issue. And like you mentioned, the teams that are left in these playoffs, besides the Lakers, we talked about it. The Celtics core has been together for 5 years now. The Miami Heat core has been together for like 4 or 5 years as well. Same thing with this Denver Nuggets team. These guys have maintained their core. They've built from within to get to the points they are right now, and that's why they are seen as the best teams in the league. The Lakers, they shot in the dark. They caught fire at the exact right time, but the very limitations that we saw that we feared for going into these playoffs all showed up in this conference finals matchup as they got absolutely destroyed by the Denver Nuggets. Now you have to go through this whole process again. You know, with the LeBron team, that a team is not going to stay stagnant. They just they have to figure out a way to build around find the perfect role players for this team But then again, that's changing half your roster. Like you said, another roster turnover type offseason. It's just something that it's just not going to be sustainable year in, year out. You need to have some sort of continuity, and that's what's been really key for a lot of the recent champions as well.
Mhm.
It's going to be extremely interesting to see what they're going to be able to do this offseason. But even if LeBron and AD, let's assume that they're healthy to the beginning of the season, what are they going to look at Game 54? Or are they going to look at Game 71? Are they going to be ready for another playoff run? We don't know that. Even when they are, LeBron has been dealing with this like lingering foot issue for the past like month or so. Anthony Davis has had his fair share of injuries this season, and you could tell he definitely wasn't the same player in the West Conference Finals. It's just something that you can't trust anymore. And the whole, like you mentioned, the whole super team thing is not going to work against when you have so many of these teams around you. Not even mentioning like the Philadelphia 76ers, not even mentioning a team like the Phoenix Suns, who's going to have another year under their belt with this core. It's just not going to be able to compete with them. I think their window is actually closed.
TV, I'm gonna go through something real quick that I think would be super interesting of an exercise. Not really like us doing anything in particular, but I just want to go through the last couple of champions and highlight something that you just mentioned, which is the idea of continuity. This is kind of where my final points are on kind of this whole thing with the Lakers. Golden State Warriors won the championship last year based on a core that was strictly built off of the lead guys that carried them for seasons on seasons that developed internally under the Warriors brass, with Jordan Poole having a breakout season. The Milwaukee Bucks finally broke through the issues that they were dealing with in terms of being a Giannis-centric team by also getting a guy like Drew Holiday to put them over the top. But for the most part, the development was already there with guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, even guys like Bobby Portis mixed in as dudes who are working within the organization, developing into these big time players, positioning themselves well. The 2020 NBA finals with the Lakers in the bubble. I think a lot of people will look at the bubble and discount the Lakers for the style of play that took place there. But I also think at the same time, something that's very notable about the continuity aspect is though although that was the team that had AD for like the first full season, right? That
Yeah,
was the
base.
first full season of Anthony Davis, right? But something
Yeah,
that's also notable about that continuity thing is a lot of guys mention the idea of forging very close bonds with their teams in that environment because there was nothing else to do besides play basketball and be with the guys. So even then, despite that being a newly developed team, and remember there was a huge layoff that could have really made things different. But when you have veteran leadership like LeBron James, like KCP, like Rajon Rondo, dudes in that locker room that know how to galvanize troops and get guys together, yes, that mentality to be able to bring guys together and create this continuity under the umbrella of something as crazy as the bubble, they were able to win the championship. The Toronto Raptors were essentially the same core with one guy swapped out, the exact same core for at least the last 2 seasons prior that was making a very strong run at the Eastern Conference semi and Eastern Conference finals, right? On a
yes,
season to season basis, battling against those Cleveland Cavaliers teams. The Golden State Warriors and their 2 championships prior to that, of course, there's the Kevin Durant portion of it, but they also had their core that was already slowly churning. When you look at it, right, I just went through the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of teams, flash 5 championship winning teams, right? That continuity aspect that you just went over is the common theme with every
yes,
single champion throughout that entire thing. So no matter you think about it, no matter how the 3-point shot has changed the play style, no matter how good big men have gotten from season to season, no matter how important we value big men, depth and continuity has surpassed all of those different factors every single season for the last 5+ years in terms of determining who the champion of that year is. It just goes to show you that the Lakers can do whatever they want because of it being Tinseltown. But if you do not build your roster around this method, you have a ceiling on how far you can go. They ran into a team who was built in this way, as opposed to them who are not, for the long haul, especially which means not only did they run out of gas here in this postseason, but they don't have much gas left in the tank to move them going forward, and that puts them in a tough position.
Yeah, and this whole trend is going to continue this year because whoever's coming out with the NBA championship is going to have the exact same sort of build, whether it's the Celtics, Heat, or the Denver Nuggets.
Exactly.
That's just the way things. That's how championship teams are born. And this whole roster turnover thing is just not, like I mentioned, it's just not sustainable. We're gonna see how they're gonna look next season, but like you mentioned, it's gonna look very, very different whether they go with the 3-star route, adding in Kyrie Irving or not. So it's gonna be interesting to see if the Lakers, you know what, if they run it back, maybe it could be a little bit different. But we'll see what happens if they do come into that. It's gonna be definitely a very interesting offseason, especially over there in Tinseltown. But yeah, those are our thoughts on the two conference finals series. Each of the teams are involved. Let us know down below what you guys think. And next episode, which we'll be releasing next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about our finals predictions, which is going to be a very, very exciting episode. So don't forget to check that out. That will be coming out next Wednesday. But we are now here at the final segment of the show. Last week we did the quiz, so this week we are coming back up with the draft. And this week's draft is going to be very interesting. The pool of players we're going to choose from today are players who are one-time All-Stars. But with a caveat, we are not allowed to choose any one-time All-Stars from this year or last year. Because when me and Jay were looking at this list, we're like, you know what? A lot of these guys on this list, let's be honest, they're not going to be one-time All-Stars. They're going to be like 5+ time All-Stars at this point. So we think that was kind of a bit of cheating. We're going to go back from 2021 and before to try and create starting fives of players here to make the best team possible. And once again, at the end, we're gonna list them off for you, and you're going to tell us who has the better team as well. Jay, how are you feeling about this draft?
I'm hyped, man. There's still some interesting names on here. Of course, like just for some examples, TV mentioned some of the one-time All-Stars that won't end up being drafted. Jared Allen, LaMelo Ball, obviously Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's one of my favorite players. Like these are guys that won't get picked because we think that they're definitely going to be adding to their resume. But there's still a ton of really dope guys on this list, even if you cut off the guys that are a lot more recent in terms of making their All-Star appearances.
100%. I think it's going to be a very, very good draft once again. You know how this draft goes. Jay gets the first pick, and if we're going to be running it serpentine, so that means I get the second pick and the third pick. He gets the fourth pick and fifth pick, and so on and so forth. So Jay, as it goes, you get the number one pick. Who is going to be your guy to lead your team?
All right. I think the guy that I want to go with. Oh, and we do have to mention the caveat as well. The player that we're drafting, we're getting the all-star version of them as well.
Yeah. So that version of them from that year. So that's again another interesting caveat to add to that.
I'm still getting a big body team though. I already set my mind on it, so I already know what I'm about to do. I'm gonna start with Sharif Abdul-Rahim.
Oh, that's a good choice. That is a very good choice. People forget, man, him on the Atlanta Hawks team, he was a freaking baller. I do like that decision. I get back-to-back picks here, and man, this guy was one of my favorite players growing up. This guy's like All-Star year was a sight to behold. Give me Danny Granger.
I'm hating so bad right now, bro.
His All-Star season, 26 points per game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. This guy was a 40% three-point shooter. This guy, if he was in his prime in this NBA, Danny Granger would have been him. He would be that guy. He is going to be my first pick in this draft. I absolutely love Danny Granger growing up. I think he's going to be an excellent pick here. But I get back-to-back picks. Very interesting. I'm choosing between two guys. And again, some of my favorites growing up. I'm going to go with, because Danny Granger's works so much better off ball. I'm going to have someone who can run the point guard but could also run a lot of wing positions. I know who you want. I think you're going to be able to get him just because I have my score, but I'm going to take 2012 Andre Iguodala.
That's a good one. 2012 Iggy is a demon.
2012 Iggy was that guy. He played 62 games that year. He didn't score many points, but this guy was just the ultimate utility player. Could do a little bit of everything. One of the best defenders in the league at the time as well. Give me Iguodala. He's probably going to play at my 2.
I'm so glad that you picked them though. But I'm sick about Danny Granger. Sleeper pick. I like that pick, by the way, TV. That's a sleeper pick. He was definitely my next guy, actually. I was staring at his name. I guess you can see my screen, low-key. All right, so the next 2 guys that I'm going to go with, I got to get AK-47. I got to.
No.
I got to.
I was choosing between him and Iggy, man. It was
Yeah,
AK.
when you mentioned somebody playing your point guard, I was like, oh, ain't no way he got AK playing point guard. So come on, man. And then I think the other guy that I actually want to pick too, I'm gonna have run my point guard.
Yeah.
Because in his All-Star season, my boy was all over the place. Give me Brandon Ingram. 2020 All-Star. We talked about it off camera, but now that I'm like really looking at the group that I want to put together as a very big man related squad, give me BI at the point guard spot, man, for sure.
I'm so pressed about that AK-47 pick.
Well, you took Danny Granger. You got a bucket regardless, man. Don't do me like that. You took my pick first. I had to get you back.
Kirilenko was that. Yo, he's one of those guys. Put him in today's NBA. The length, the ball handling, the defensive ability. Yo, this guy would be a demon in today's NBA.
Paid in this NBA, by the way.
He would 100% get paid. I missed watching AK-47, man. That guy was an absolute beast. You got freaking everyone's like 6'10" and above too, and these guys are all like players. Man.
Well, watch, it's gonna get better.
So I got Iggy, I got Danny Granger. One of the ways I'm thinking of trying to beat your team is by just completely just outscoring you. And I have one guy in mind that could possibly like help that case. I have back-to-back picks, so I could go with this. But yeah, I'm gonna go with it. Give me Michael Redd.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's another good one. Oh my gosh.
Michael Redd, his All-Star season in 04 as well. 21 points per game. This guy, if you're allowed to shoot as many threes as you are in this game in today's NBA, Michael Redd is gonna freaking would be like Klay Thompson levels in terms of the amount of times he's shooting from 3. He was that guy. He just was a part of an era which that wasn't encouraged. And if you tell him to do that now, oh man, this guy's gonna be like a near 30 point per game scorer. Believe that. He is gonna be my pick over there. I'm probably just gonna run Iggy at the 1, not gonna lie. So I'm just gonna run with that. Now my second pick. Lots of good choices. Lots of good ones.
It really is though.
I'm gonna go with one of those other guys that we consider to be a cheat code in this. Let's go, Kristaps. Give me Kristaps.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one too.
Give me Chris. He got injured before he could play in the All-Star game, but man, that season he had with the New York Knicks when this is like in his 3rd season, 22 points a game, 6 rebounds. This guy was flying all over the place. An athletic 7'3" guy. I need to have him on my team. Give me Kristaps.
Man, okay, he's definitely trying to outscore me. I definitely see that.
Yeah.
All right, so here's where I'm at now, and I told you I'm going with big body teams on this one, so I'm going with a big body squad. So here's where I'm at. So far we got B.I., Sharif, and Andre. Let me get.
Wait, who do you? So you got Sharif Abdur-Rahim.
Yeah, Sharif, B.I., Sharif, and
yeah.
Andre Karolinko. Yeah.
Okay, got you.
Give me final season in Utah, Gordon Hayward at the 2. My boy was a dog. 21.9 points, still a career high average wise. 3.5 assists, 5.4 rebounds a game, just about a steal and a half, just about a steal a game as well. My boy was shooting pretty well as well, pretty much. I mean, from the field, it was a little light, 47%, but 40% from 3 on 5 attempts per game back in 2017. I'm not gonna say it's high volume, but it's pretty good volume, especially on that kind of efficiency. Also near a career high as well. I think it's the second best of his
Yeah.
career in terms of shooting splits. Give me
Yeah.
Gordon Hayward. I'm gonna put him at number. I'm gonna put him at the 2 next to Bi in that backcourt. And then the last guy I'm gonna go with is a name that is become infamous now. But I love this guy when he was at the peak of his powers. Last season with the Los Angeles Lakers, looked like he was the next coming. The front court duo partner to Pau Gasol. Give me Andrew Bynum. Andrew
Oh.
Bynum, 18.7 points per game, 11.8 rebounds, nearly 2 blocks a night. The efficiency, disgusting, 55.8% from the field. My boy was feeling a little frisky taking a 3 every 30 games, but hey man, he was just trying to expand the range. Nothing too crazy, nothing too crazy. But this was a guy that back in that time, around 2011, the conversation was who is the best center in the league? Andrew Bynum, Dwight Howard, or Brooke Lopez. That was the conversation once upon a time. Give me
Yeah.
Andrew Bynum at my 5.
You know what's funny? He was gonna be my 50-50 between him and this guy, so you made my decision a lot easier
I
because
know
I
who it
was
is. I
at
think I know
my
who it is.
5. I need defense.
I knew
I
it. I
need
knew it.
I need some form of defense. This guy in his heyday, defensive player of the year, athletic as all hell, one of the biggest lob threats of the early 2010s. Give me Tyson Chandler.
I
Tyson,
knew it, bro. Oh
Tyson
man.
Chandler was. It was gonna be him or Bynum. It was gonna be him
Same.
or Bynum.
Same.
It was gonna be him or Bynum, but I was gonna lean him anyways. But that Bynum, I remember Bynum back in the day. This guy was an absolute. No, people forget because all people know him for now is freaking dropping the bowling ball on his foot and
Heck
ruining his whole
yeah.
career.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
I mean, but Andrew Bynum has become more synonymous with his time in Philly than he ever was with his time with the Lakers, which is crazy. But
he was an NBA champion, bro. He was a starting center on the championship team.
exactly, bro. But like that's excuse me, it's so funny because the minute you started doing your lead up, I was like, oh my God, I know he's gonna take Tyson. Because I'm sitting there like, if I don't take Tyson, he's got to. Because I'm thinking, like, okay, we're talking about all this scoring. Who's gonna block shots? Who's gonna be a rim defender? And I'm like, DPOY Tyson Chandler might be like a top 5 center of all time, like for like one season. He might be up there in terms of some of the better defensive seasons of all
Yeah,
time. Now, of course, I'm going to argue for my boy Joakim Noah up there as well, but like,
yes.
you know what I mean? Like Tyson in his heyday as a defensive like a rim running center, rim defending center. It's one of the best to do it in terms of shot blocking. One of the best to ever do it.
100%, and
The
he can
triple
dominate
rebound.
the court as well. Oh my goodness, I had to have him on the court. I absolutely like. He was like just synonymous with just him, like in terms of like the hustle players, someone who is just gonna be like in the mix of things every single possession. You gotta put Tyson Chandler in that discussion. He is gonna round out my team. Jay, we have our lineup set up. Let me know what lineup you got right now.
All right, man. Big body squad out here, man. At the 1, I have
Yes.
Brandon Ingram running the point guard. I have Gordon Hayward from Utah Day. Gordon Hayward playing at my 2 guard position. At the 3, I've got Sharif Abdul Rahim. At the 4, I've got my boy Andre Kirilenko, aka AK-47. And then at the 5, gotta get some more respect, put some more love on my boy Andrew Bynum, who I thought was definitely one of the better centers coming up in the early 2010s. If he had been able to hold it down, man, I think he would be synonymous with the Lakers. But hey, man, a really big time center nonetheless in his heyday.
100%. That is a damn good team. I'm still pressed about the AK-47 pick. I was real, he would have made this team so perfect. He would have made this team so perfect. But I respected. I knew he was gonna. There's no he was gonna stay on the board. I respect the AK-47 pick. But man, my team is still pretty damn good. At the point guard position, we talk about Point Iggy all the time. We are running it on this team. We have point guard Andre Iguodala. At the 2 guard, someone who's just gonna get absolute buckets for me on the wing. One of my favorite lefties of all time in Michael Redd. At the forward, The streets remember this man. The streets will always remember Danny Granger and his time with the Indiana Pacers. Pre-Paul George, by the way. This is the guy before Paul George came around. Let's not forget how his time with the Pacers. At the power forward position, give me prime Kristaps. One of the most hyped up players in the league. That injury kind of derailed his career, but he was that guy. And at the center position, give me the guy to lock it down in the middle. Give me Tyson Chandler. Man, our teams are looking damn good. Are you happy with your team?
Yeah, bro. I like that we were able. I think the stipulations made this draft that much more fun because we highlighted a handful of guys that some people are gonna have to Google, some people are gonna have some real good flashbacks on, and other people are just going to be able to now start this conversation of, dang, how would this guy play in today's league? And I think that's a great conversation that we can kind of get started up because we got a handful of guys. Danny Granger was a great name. Andre Kirilenko, great name in terms of starting up that discourse of like, dang, if you look back at how they did back when they were in their heyday at all-star caliber level, what would they do in today's league? And I think that's just a great convo, bro.
100%. Before we head out, were there any other guys that you were putting in consideration when you're looking at this list? Like,
oh man, okay, let me go back real quick. I was definitely I definitely think Tyson would have been on that list if you didn't grab him. I'm so glad you did. Let me get back to the bottom of that list real quick because it was definitely a handful of names that I was peeping. Okay.
I mean, some names that I had in mind: DeAndre Jordan, to 2017. DeAndre Jordan was that guy. Jamal Mashburn, again, early 2000s dude, but this guy was an absolute bucket. I think that he definitely deserves some consideration on this list.
Derek Coleman, I think, is another really good one.
100%. I'm just trying to look. Yeah, I'm just trying to look around to see if there's any other guys that we're just completely leaving out. I mean, no, we listed some really good ones over there.
I guess Hornacek and Hershey Hawkins are also some cool ones.
Yeah. Honestly, okay, this is gonna be a super random name. Mehmet Okur. I don't know if you.
Hey, man, Utah Mehmet was a body. Come on now.
This guy would be the ideal stretch five in today's game.
Yeah.
The ideal stretch five. I think that this guy had the range. This guy had some good post play. Mehmet Okur was pretty good. He was a pretty damn good player. I think he was someone I had to look. I mean, I wasn't gonna choose him, but I looked at the list. I was like, oh, maybe. Oh wow, Are we gonna kick ourselves for not picking this guy? Ron Artest?
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. Ron came up. I'm not gonna lie. Ron came up, and Brooklyn version of Brook Lopez was another one that's a sleeper. 2013 Brook Lopez. That's another one that was up there. Like I mentioned earlier, Brook Lopez, Andrew Bynum, and Dwight Howard. That was the convo once upon a time. So yeah, I think that's another really good name. Ron Artest is another really good name on that list as well. I mean, I think we hit all the big body guys. Nick Van Exel, kind of. Gerald Wallace was a cheat code in 2K that 2010 year when he made the All-Star.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. Hey man, look, say what you want, but him and Corey Maggette back in 2010 to 2012, they were dogs in 2K. They were two guys that you could go to work with. You know what I'm saying? So Gerald Wallace, I'm gonna give him his respect as well. So yeah, man, I think those are probably the main handful of guys that I think really fit the bill in terms of dudes that we could have still chosen from that just didn't make the cut.
100%. And again, fit with the team as well. That was definitely part of our making of this team. So, someone like Meta World Peace, aka Ron Artest, was in consideration, but again, he might have made your team, but he unfortunately didn't make ours. Let us know if you could have drafted a better team, what other guys you would choose on this list that we missed out on. Let us know down below. But Jay, we have reached another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching and listening. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we head out?
Well, one, stop sleeping on the Nuggets. I think we all should take the off-season pledge to give the Nuggets their respect, regardless of how this NBA Finals goes. And man, I think the other thing is just, bro, stay tuned. Me and TV have been chopping it up off camera a ton over the last couple of days. The summertime for this podcast. Oh man, let me tell you, in terms of the ideas, the content, the potential that we have in terms of some things that we have cooking up in terms of people to have on the podcast, all of that stuff is just sitting in the works. We both have more free time than we've ever had this entire time since starting the podcast, which means we have a lot of stuff that we've been sitting on. So stay tuned. If there was any time to subscribe to the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, it's probably right now.
Yes, this is the perfect time too. And of course, the NBA Finals coming around. Be on the lookout for just lots of NBA content on the Instagrams, the TikToks, and all that good stuff, and as well as the weekly episodes. But yeah, thanks again for watching or listening to another episode. Thank you guys for all the support. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as hit the like button. And show your support in any way possible. Anytime on the podcast networks as well, Spotify and Apple. And remember to follow Take Your Free Throws on Instagram and TikTok, as well as our personal on any of those social media platforms as well. All that information can be found down in the description. But yeah, this is another great episode. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. That's Jay signing out. Take it easy, guys. Peace.
Peace.